Well, here you are. You made it. It sure wasn't easy, though. In addition to successfully completing Shipley's demanding curriculum, you've also been navigating through an era of polycrisis. That's why I am going to forego dispensing the traditional advice on life that one normally hears at a commencement, and instead give you what I hope will be meaningful perspective. After all, my father gave the baccalaureate address to my class, and the Surgeon General was our commencement speaker, and I don't remember what either of them said. I just remember that my father didn't embarrass me. So let's start with 2021, just as you were about to enter high school, when the then current Surgeon General issued an advisory about youth mental health. He sounded the alarm because of the more than 40% increase in depression and anxiety in the decade leading up to the COVID-19 pandemic, which then accelerated the increase. In 2024, he issued another advisory about the parallel epidemic of loneliness that affects as many as 1 out of every 2 Americans. Is it any wonder then that you have been called the anxious generation? So I thought, what if we rendered what you've experienced so far into something like Billy Joel's "We Didn't Start the Fire"? So think of, I'm not going to sing it, I'm not going to rap it, but keep the tune in your voice, or if you're from the graduating class, maybe the Fall Out Boy version of it. Anyway, here goes. Iran war, Strait of Hormuz, high gas prices, rising dues. War in Gaza, Lebanon fight, Yemen battle late at night. Ukraine conflict, Congo strife, Sudan genocide takes life. Afghanistan falls to Taliban, terror spreads through African lands. Climate change, the seas rise fast, refugees flee from the blasts. Polar vortex, Canada burns, political divides and turns. Trust in institutions breaks, January 6th shakes. COVID lockdowns, Omicron spread, youth depression, anxious dread. ICE raids, pretty and good slain, Floyd's death brings worldwide pain. Uvalde school, shootings bleed, TikTok's influence, China's lead. Jeffrey Epstein, secrets told, Mar-a-Lago's story unfolds. Forest fires, AI climbs, who declares Ebola a global fight? We didn't start the fire, you didn't start the fire. But it wasn't all bad, though. I mean, come on, the Eagles won last year, right? They won the Super Bowl. So, clearly a lot to be anxious about, made all the worse by the human propensity for what is called negativity bias. Negativity bias is an evolutionary mechanism causing the human brain to register and remember negative stimuli more intensely than positive ones. It fuels the modern belief that we are all living in the end times by distorting our perception of risk, causing continuous global crises to overshadow the long-term progress of humanity. That's why I think we need to remember that this young, scrappy, and hungry country was born anxious. I want you to think back 250 years ago and imagine what the world looked like to the graduating class of 1776. The 14 and 15-year-olds graduating that June lived in a colony that had already been in open rebellion against Great Britain for more than a year. For those seniors, the war was not an abstraction, but real, present, and right here. That June, the Continental Congress had just gathered down the road in Philadelphia to decide whether to break from Britain altogether. 250 years ago today, Thomas Jefferson had just started drafting the Declaration of Independence. Your predecessors faced a stark choice: rebellion or loyalty to the increasingly tyrannical and possibly bipolar King George III. Either option could result in loss of property, incarceration, or even death. In 1776, you were considered a military age, with boys as young as 12 becoming Navy midshipmen or a drummer standing in front of an infantry regiment in battle. A month after you graduated, the British would capture New York City along with American troops and cannons. As winter came on, what was left of Washington's Continental Army retreated into Bucks County up the road, his army dwindling as enlistments began to expire and the disheartened chose to go home. Things looked very bleak for the rebellion in December of 1776. It was at this point that Thomas Paine wrote in The American Crisis, "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value." Shortly afterwards, on Christmas night, Washington crossed the Delaware and surprised Hessian troops near Trenton. 10 days later, he stopped a British counterthrust near Princeton. These successes boosted morale and spurred recruitment. Although the British would take Philadelphia in the autumn of 1777, Washington remained focused on defeating and taking the surrender of a British expeditionary force in Saratoga. This stunning victory prompted France to join the American cause, assuring eventual victory. Now, we all know how the crisis ended with a new country where every American experiment sets the precedent. Not perfect. It would take 75 years to cure the birth defect of slavery and another 100 years to ensure equal civil and political rights actually applied legally. But this country has always been perfectible. A country unlike anything that ever came before, and which by turning Enlightenment philosophies into practice became a hope for people everywhere, whose Bill of Rights formed the core of the UN Charter and the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. When I sat where you do 45 years ago, there was a lot to be anxious about then, too. And don't worry, I won't do Bill Joel again. The 1979 Iranian Revolution saw American diplomats held hostage for 444 days and spawned an oil crisis that led to gas rationing here in Pennsylvania. I see people here old enough to remember odd-even days for getting your gas. That same year, the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, which prompted a reintroduction of registration for the draft and a nuclear arms buildup. The doomsday clock ticked ever closer to midnight, and the threat of World War increased. Genocide raged in Cambodia after the U.S. evacuated Vietnam. There was a panic after a lunatic laced Tylenol with cyanide and put him back on the shelves. The crack cocaine epidemic started bringing violence and despair. There were assassination attempts against President Reagan and the Pope, while Islamists killed Egypt's President Sadat for making peace with Israel. The first AIDS cases were recognized, while girls and women had to deal with toxic shock syndrome. I did not feel that the wheels were coming off the bus, though. Despite the Watergate scandal and impeachment, and despite revelations of U.S. intelligence agencies spying on U.S. citizens, I had faith that our institutions were trustworthy. I believed then, and still do, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assertion that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And guess what? Just like our forebears did 250 years ago, we rose to the occasion. By the time I finished college and entered the workforce, some amazing things started to happen, ones that many people would have thought impossible. Nuclear arms were controlled and reduced. The Cold War ended peacefully with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Millions of people were freed from repression. Liberal market democracies replaced communist command economies. In the 30 years from 1990 to 2019, the percentage of people living in extreme poverty declined from nearly 38% of the world's population to just about 8%. The number of worldwide conflict deaths dropped from a high in 1990 to almost record lows in the 2000s, despite the post-9/11 wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. The president's emergency plan for AIDS relief saved 26 million lives and allowed more than 7 million babies to be born HIV-free. Apartheid ended peacefully in South Africa, and the Good Friday Agreement ended 30 years of violence in Northern Ireland. IBM's first PC was introduced the summer I graduated from Shipley, but the information revolution didn't really take off until personal computing connected with the internet in the 1990s. Despite predictions that computers and automation would make large swaths of the workforce redundant, it instead led to increases in productivity, as well as demand for better educated workers and higher wages for those working in fields where computer use became intensive. You can probably guess why I'm sharing this experience with you. AI is not the coming of the apocalypse. Just as computer use resulted in many businesses reorganizing themselves, there were no such things as IT departments when I was growing up, so too will be the case with AI. As the CEO of Goldman Sachs recently wrote in the New York Times, quote, "Will AI disrupt the labor market? Absolutely. This transition, like other big moments in history, will entail new challenges, especially as AI separates labor from productivity in magnitudes not seen before. But the United States has a long track record of creating new jobs in response to disruption, from the electrification of the 1900s to the digital revolution of the 1990s," unquote. AI will bring different jobs. It's a great tool, but it's only as good as the prompts people give it. And producing those prompts requires you to have knowledge, experience, wisdom, and judgment. What better place to develop such a foundation for facing the future than with a Shipley education? So while it may seem that these are the times that try men's souls, as Bruce Springsteen sings in Wrecking Ball, hard times come, hard times go. Hard times come, hard times go. How will you use the privilege of your Shipley education to shape the future? Will you take this moment and fashion a new and better world the way the class of 1776 did, where everything you do sets a precedent as part of the American experiment? I have no doubt that you can and you will. You are equipped to not just survive what comes next, but also to thrive as a unique and valuable individual, as a friend, as family, as a community, and as a citizen of this great country and the world. No, these are not the end times. This is the beginning of something amazing. That's why they call it commencement. And trust me, you've got this. Thank you.